All right. Thank you for clicking on my Upwork profile and taking a look at some of my projects. So in this project, I'm going to go over some running back analysis I performed in Tableau and also in Python. So in this analysis, I wanted to look at running backs in the NFL and figure out if age was the biggest factor in determining when a running back falls off. If you check on Bleacher Report or other articles or papers put together, they generally say around age 27, age 28 season is when a running back starts to fall off the ladder. I was under the impression, my thought was age is a big factor, but is it really age or is it more about the use of a player, right? So, you have situations where a running back comes in at 21, 22, starts maybe getting 300 carries and touches. So they're getting 350, maybe they're getting 350 total touches a year or something like that, right? And I think when that piles on, that's what's really going to be the larger that's going to be the largest variable that's going to cause them to deteriorate. So when I did some analysis, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you the Tableau dashboard and kind of go over it. And if you have any questions, let me know. And thank you for checking out my profile. So let me go ahead and share. Okay, so here's the dashboard. And as I said here, all the code is here in my GitHub, which you can check here. Here is the results from the model from the 4 dependent variables. And I posted their explained variance ratio. And as you can see, 39% of their variance is coming from total touches, which I think kind of makes sense intuitively. And then 30% of it comes from age, which also makes sense because, even if you're not getting as many touches, eventually your body will start to wear down. And then age is a big factor. And then at 21.64% is the yards per attempt. So from a running perspective, so rushing, which that makes sense as well. And then at 9.27% is also yards per reception. So so let's go into it, right? So for this example, I looked at the Baltimore Ravens, and here I have my team yards per attempt. So I took the average of all the players, all the running backs on that team at the time, and got their average yards per attempt. So in this example, we're gonna kind of go over some examples using 2013. But at 2013, it dipped down to 2.135, which is pretty low. That's very concerning, right? And then here you have your team yards per reception, and this here is also at 5, which is pretty low. Both of these are definitely below the the NFL average. NFL average 3.759 for that, and then the yards per reception here was also 6.8, and then team PPA, which is metric I came up with, which is points per attempt. So it's basically taking what are the fantasy points for receptions and in rushing yards, and then combining it together, and I exclude out the touchdowns, as that can cause unnecessary noise, because you have specialists who may come in from the 1 or 2 yard line and then get touchdowns but don't get any yards. And touchdowns, you get 6 points in fantasy for a touchdown, but to get a point for rushing yards or reception, it requires you to get 10 yards equals 1 point, right? And even their PPA here is at 0.33. It's fairly low compared to the average of the NFL was 0.49, right? So if I scroll down here, what I have this table here, which returns me all of the it returns me a list of all the players who had above the rushing attempt average for the NFL at the time. So, so it gives me basically, I would say probably around 60 players, basically, the top 2 running backs in each team, right? The guys who get the most usage. So it gives you a good view into who are the most used running backs in the NFL, who are the guys really getting the carries, right? And what I can do here is I'm going to show you this Green Bay example, right? So I can click on a player. So let's click on Eddie Lacy, and I'm going to go back to the other player, right? So I can click on Eddie Lacy and it changes, right? And it allows me to compare this player against the players. So so in this case, I have Ray Rice 2013, 2010 we have Willis McGahee, in 2013 we have Bernard Pierce. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at just, I'm going to switch this back to another player, right? So the way this tool is meant to be used by the NFL or just, somebody's maybe trying to do like fantasy is your thought process should be is, okay, it's 2013. I see that my running backs aren't doing well. I got Bernard Pierce not doing very well. I got Ray Rice here as well, not doing very, very well. And in the case of Ray Rice, he's been playing pretty long. Now, this attempt, he's probably, I would say at this point, he's probably already signed a big contract. But let's say he had dipped down around year 4. Your question should be asking yourself, is it worth me? Should I sign him to an extension, or should I be looking at another player that I can pick up who may be available for free agency or a veteran? And this gets look at James Starks, who's 4 years, so maybe Green Bay doesn't pick up his 5th-year option. He's available. His PPA is very comparable to Ray Rice's PPA and his season at his second season in the league, which was 0.59, which, as we know above, it can hear that is well above the average of the NFL. And quite frankly, back to 2008 was one of their highest times for the Ravens. So his comp was very, very good, right? So maybe you want to switch over into James Starks. So maybe you release Ray Rice and maybe you pick up James Starks, which should effectively increase your PPA. Or maybe you say, hey, Bernard, you've been here 2 years. Maybe you want to cut bait and you want to switch over and pick up James Starks instead. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how this is working. It's allowing you to figure out my veteran players. Should I pick up a veteran? Maybe I don't see any veterans that fit the mold. Maybe I go and pick up a rookie. So it's giving you different types of thought process. So let me give you another one, right? Let's get Toby Gerhart. Okay. We got Ray Rice again. We see Toby here in his 4th year. So again, let's say Minnesota does not pick up his 5th-year option. His PPA was 0.71. I mean, it's very, very, very strong. Maybe you want to go with him. Right, I could pick another player. Let's say I want to go with, let's look at Le'Veon Bell, right? Let's look at this guy. So at this point, Le'Veon Bell, he's only played in 1 year, so we don't even want to look at that. It's kind of hard to tell how successful he is, and because he's only in 1 year, he hasn't really played that much, so the team's probably going to keep him. Let's pick somebody else. Like they're not going to take that cap hit. Let's look at Jamal Charles. Now, Jamal Charles has been in the league quite a few years here, but if you notice, right, so if I click on this here, what this gives you is it compares this person here and each person at different points at the same age with different touches, right? So the age Ray Rice is 2013, it's comparing it to Jamal Charles at the same age there. And then let's get here. So the same age, Jamal Charles is doing very, very well. And it's only 1 year after. So maybe the Chiefs are willing to let him go that season, that after this 5th-year season. And maybe your thought that's just 6 years. Maybe your thought he's available. They didn't sign him. Maybe you want to go and pick him up. Because you notice, again, so this is 2012. So there's a 1 year gap. There's a 1 year gap between their age. Ray Rice is 1 year older, but yet at that time, Jamal Charles only had 936 carries compared to Ray Rice, who at the same age had effectively 900 more carries, which is, over a course of 3, that's probably almost about 3 years, 2.5 years of work. That's a big deal. So you can make the case that you still have a lot of juice out of Jamal Charles, where Ray Rice is starting to deteriorate. And then another part we have here on our dashboard, if I go here, we can look at, let me pull up here. Sorry, guys. So we can look here and look at, this is what we produced from the model in GitHub. And it gives us the ability to say, okay, show us all the instances where a player was, when the model said, based on the person's yards per attempt, their total touches, their PPA, all these different factors, does the model predict that this person is going to be below the one standard deviation, going to be below the one standard deviation for PPA, right? And these are all the players that came back. And as you saw, the model produced around, I think, 98% accuracy, and it's very accurate. So if a person, failed this test, what this means was that they were below the average yards per attempt for rushing, or they're below the average yards per reception, and their PPA was below that. So we're saying, okay, if you were generally below in these three categories, and you had a high total touch, then generally speaking, we felt very, very confident, 90% confident that you were going to be below. You're going to be below the one standard deviation marker for PPA. So these are players that necessarily, you're not really looking at like here, Edgerrin James getting towards, and these are the 20s that see getting towards the end of his career. That's not somebody you're going to really want to pick up, right? Yeah, that's it. That's it for the analysis. If you have any questions, like I said, just let me know.